Walter Clark,
Huh?
you enjoying the exhibit?
Hey, Don, what's happening, man?
How about if I ask you for some of your recollections of Phil Corinne?
Well, yeah, I'd be glad to do that, of course. I'm so glad that you hit me to this exhibit. I wasn't aware of it. I was in isolation.
Yeah, well, right now we're at the Smart Museum on the University of Chicago campus in the Hyde Park neighborhood with Walter Clark, a Chicagoan who was friends with KELAN Phil Cochran since the early 1960s. Walter's a retired school teacher, now in his 80s, correct?
Correct. Yeah, 87 to be exact.
Oh, man. And he's a saxophonist. He played in several of Phil Corinne's ensembles over the years. So this interview is an attempt to document some of his recollections in the context of this current exhibition at the Smart called The Time Is Now, an exploration of the art, music, and political scenes on the south side of Chicago and the related cross-fertilization. So Walter, welcome, and thanks for your participation in this interview. Maybe we can start with how you first met Brother Phil Corinne.
Okay.
It goes way back.
We're going to stand up and then, okay, that's cool. Right, well, I met Phil Corinne, of course.
Shortly after you left Sun Ra, I remember you saying.
Well, my first connectivity to the cultural energy that is associated with Phil was first off meeting Sun Ra when I was 17 years old.
Yeah, let's go back to that then. Even before you met Phil, you actually crossed paths with Sun Ra himself. What was that like?
No, it was, no, 17 was the first time I met him, period. On the street, 63rd East, actually.
Well before you became acquainted with Phil Corinne.
Yeah, 12 years.
Okay. So here's Sun Ra on the street.
With another guy I was with, otherwise I could have passed by Sun Ra and never knew who he was. But Walter Williams, who was a distinguished musician who was playing with Sun Ra also, and I happened to meet, he graduated from DuSable High School.
What instrument did Walter play?
Saxophone.
Okay.
He was awesome, and he played with Sun Ra. And it's cosmic, let's put it that way, because I'm with Walter, and Walter ran into Sun Ra, and he said, oh, he called him Sonny at that time.
Yeah, that's what Phil always called him too, was Sonny.
And Walter said, hey, Sonny, he apologized for not making the rehearsal earlier in the afternoon. And Sun Ra, a very quiet spoken word, said, yes, I know. He told Walter where he was and what he was doing. So that blew my mind, actually, at that time. And real quickly, Sun Ra shared some things about the history and the image of black culture and black people. He showed me a picture of a book in J.A. Rogers' book, which is devoted to black culture and icons. And so I was never the same since then. So I was, for 12 years after that incident, I was on a quest to find out my identity, so to speak. And at some point in time, I went to college, graduated, and even though I majored in chemistry, music was always the focus.
Your true passion.
My true passion and religion. And in my last stage of, I got married, and then I still started exploring identity within the culture, and I found myself examining the Jewish religion. There was a thing that I was a part of called the Ethiopian Hebrew Culture Center on 61st East of King Drive, and as a result of my being there, two of my young men associated with that organization knew Phil Corinne, and they brought me to Phil Corinne's apartment, which was right on the corner of 74th. 75th and Cottage Grove on the north-west corner.
Well, if I could ask, was that in the context of your saxophone playing, where maybe you would fit in musically, or
no,
just...
not at all.
Okay,
It
just
had
like
to
a...
do with cultural awareness. And it was a cosmic event because I was married then, and I was living at 73rd and Sangamon, and that particular summer day, that was August, July, and it was a very stormy day early in the morning, and when I went to Phil's apartment to meet him, of course, the heavens opened up. I mean, it was the prettiest day I've ever seen, of course. And the event, I'm not going to go into, there are a lot of cosmic events that happened on that particular
Yeah,
day.
you had mentioned.
Right, and so we...
So that was 1962?
Yeah, 12 years later, so from 49 to 62. Let's put it that
Okay,
way.
so for the record, Phil Corinne played with Sun Ra from 1959 to 61, and he moved to Chicago from St. Louis in 1952. So you met him just shortly after he decided not to go with Sun Ra when they moved to Montreal.
When I also met, there's just a little date of that. When I met Phil Corinne, he was in the Nation of Islam. And at the time I met him, he had just recently quit the organization. It had been less than a year. And so found that out later, of course, but that was the situation. So Phil was in a kind of an interim period in his life, of course. Eventually, we did connect musically, because he still was not out there. He was doing gigs, let's put it that way. You know, routine gigs that all musicians did in clubs and what have you. And I was in his apartment beyond that time, and he had composed music, which was totally. He composed music that was totally outside of my realm of understanding. I didn't have any formal music training anyway, but we were reading his music, and he used colors for different notes to reflect the different feelings, actually. That was amazing. And I remember very much, we were playing as a collective song with him. It had to do with the Black Star Line what's the guy back in New York, actually, from Jamaica, started the people were coming, when you're 87, right. But it was the Black Star Line, which was the Jamaican who started an uproar, organized black people in New York in the 60s. It was very controversial. It was a Back to Africa movement, and he got a ship called the Black Star Line. And so we were playing...
You're not talking about Marcus Garvey?
Marcus Garvey,
okay,
right. And so we were playing the music, actually, and his music was kind of, let's say, didn't have the kind of traditional structure.
Was Phil already into his modal concept?
Absolutely.
That far back?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Right. And when we were playing, I could hear. I've never been spiritually connected in any kind of awareness to where I went, but I could hear like the motors of a boat, a ship, actually. So that, it was an amazing experience with Sun Ra as well as him, of course. And
so let me ask you, your artistic development on your saxophone with Phil, was it ever like one-on-one lessons, or just absorbing it through rehearsal and just in general?
We didn't rehearse that much. He was, matter of fact, he had a family with his 6 children, and he was working at the 11th Street Police Station as a fingerprint technician, and he was evolving into changing to try to quit his responsibilities for having a full-time job. He shared with me, we still didn't have intimate contact, but on and off he shared things with me. He said he was playing one of the traditional gigs in a club, a nightclub, and he was playing with a piano player named Willie Jones. And Phil said he was playing, and he looked up and he looked around and he saw people at the bar, and he said it was kind of negative. He saw one guy, romancing one of them with his finger his hand on the rear end, what have you. And he said to himself, he said, what the hell is this, you know? And he said he walked off the gig, actually, and never looked back. And Willie Jones, the pianist, said, where you going, Phil, where you going? And so, and the rest was history. So I called Phil at the beginning of emerging from the job as a fingerprint technician. And
Well, if I could intersperse, one thing he told me, he said that one thing that Sun Ra told him stuck in his mind, and he observed it to the max, is if you love music, if you want to be a musician, do it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Listen, practice, compose, play, read about it. And so he says that became his goal. And with the fingerprint technician, he said he kept it long enough to make enough money to buy a string harp. And once he had his harp, he says, okay, I'm gone. I don't want to have some kind of life with the police department.
okay, right,
Yeah.
that interview, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, he got it together, and that was, I was on and off of it. I was there often enough. That was the emergence of the Artistic Heritage Ensemble.
Right.
And Darlene Blackburn, the dancer. So I went to his, I guess it was his first performance, which was at a club, really right at 69th or 67 in Stony Island. I don't remember the name of the club, but I remember the profile of Darlene Blackburn. Man, you're talking about African beauty, actually, just a whole.
I had the pleasure of meeting, actually you introduced me to her at Phil's funeral service.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Phil was into something similar to what Sun Ra was doing with dancers and the music and
Yeah,
everything all intertwined.
When he said artistic heritage ensemble, that involved the culture, period. All aspects of it, poetry,
Right.
dance, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, I remember prior to, I really had on and off kind of I couldn't be totally involved with Phil because naturally I had responsibilities being married and what have you.
And your own family.
But he was totally committed, of course.
So we're standing you're standing next to this photo of the Afro Arts Theater. The marquee reads, "We are closed by deceit," and some people might not understand what that means. Maybe you could fill us in?
Yeah, I wasn't. Well, during that history, I don't know how many years that spanned. With that theater actually. But
Yeah, but why was it closed in such a way, and how?
well, it had to do with it would have to do with the then Richard Daley, the mayor at the time, because it was attracting too much attention from the black community. And even at that point in time, I don't know what part the Blackstone Rangers that's right, there was an involvement with the Blackstone Rangers when Phil left, I think that's what happened. They didn't just shut Phil down totally, some kind of way.
With some phony building code violation or something?
Yeah, right, oh yeah, they created a reason to actually shut it down. So that's, that was that period. That was a euphoric, uplifting period that just changed. It changed people because not only musically, he had what you call classes in manhood. His wife actually had classes for women and their development.
Well, I think what especially rubbed Daley the wrong way was the speakers that Phil was booking in the Afro Arts Theater, like
Like Fred Hampton,
Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton,
right.
and Phil was getting kind of too powerful in his own right.
Right. Yeah, Phil said that Stokely Carmichael came there and made a statement that you need to get a gun. And Phil said, is he out of his mind?
Whoa. That's an incendiary statement if there ever were one.
So it's...
Well, that place I've heard it described as an incubator, and it wasn't just about music. It was about the community. It was about politics. It was about black awareness and culture. And
all of it, right.
And so many well-known people were either performing there or in the audience. Gwendolyn Brooks, Oscar Brown Jr., Shaka Khan, Donny Hathaway, Ben Vereen, Leroy Jones, the poet, who later changed his name to Amiri Baraka.
Yeah, so
And,
Don Lee, now, what was his name? African name, but anyway. He was there. He was Don Lee at the time I saw him perform. Mabuti, right.
Yeah, there's one photo that Phil showed me of him with James Baldwin, who had come to support Artists for Washington, and Phil was instrumental in raising funds for Harold Washington's mayoral campaign. But Harold was already part of the Afro Arts Theater well before he ran for mayor. Phil was saying that that Harold Washington was very much in that whole circle back then, when he was, you know, just a state representative and not yet mayor.
Yeah, right. Again, I really was on the periphery of so much of that was going on, of course.
So how about the AACM aspects? So for the record, people might not know that Phil was one of the original founders of the AACM, along with Muha Richard Abrams and Steve McCall and a few other people.
Jody Christian. Right?
Jody Christian was in on that too, which some people maybe are surprised by. He's not normally associated with the so-called avant-garde. But I remember Phil saying that he was with the AACM, but then somehow they parted ways. And he used the phrase, I was into consonance and they were more into dissonance.
Right, even the book for the Smart Museum with the interview for Lester Leisler, I just read some of it, and he mentioned that I don't think Phil lasted a year. And the reason that Phil told me this, of course, that he said that they were, even though they were playing avant-garde outside, that wasn't really what he wanted to do, but he said they were still being limited in terms of keeping their focus local, where Phil's influence was to announce the launching of this organization as being worldwide. And he said they were not dealing with an international perspective. They were dealing with parochial kind of orientation at the time. And of course, I was in the AACM because of Phil. I was introduced or recommended, and I was actually designated as the ticket responsible for distributing the tickets and what have you. And the concepts of the organization was to connect with the black community. And so when I was dealing with the tickets, Roscoe Mitchell of the Art Ensemble was saying, make sure you take some tickets to the University of Chicago, what have you. He said, they have a lot of facilities, what have you. I said, well, what about the black community, man? It seems like you're focusing on the University of Chicago as opposed to the black community. You know, I got disenchanted and really discouraged, so I just, you know, I didn't resign formally. I just stopped participating. But there's a whole lot of history, and I'm just, you know, this comments by me is just really kind of ambling all over the place because I wasn't totally immersed in it, of course.
So Phil always mentioned that his intent with music was like a force for healing, that he was into trance music. He told me about this cosmic experience he had on the West Side. He was playing with Sun Ra. They were playing Angels and Demons at Play, and he never witnessed that type of effect on people before that. He said Jay McShann could work up a crowd, but this was a whole nother level. And he said, I know then and there that I wanted to dedicate my life to creating music that could affect people in such a profound manner. You know, healing music, trance music.
Right.
So, and that comes through in just about every song you listen to from him.
Yes, Phil was a scientist and a researcher, and he made a formal study of sound. I remember the book that he was dealing with by a German called Helmholtz, actually. It was dealing with sound, of course. And I got a little sliver of what he was talking about, the effects of sound, of course, because early on before he launched into any of the musical organizations, we would go over to the lakefront, and he was discovering the heavens and astronomy, and of course we would look at the constellations. He'd point them out to me, and so we were doing those observations and until the sun came up and the sunrise was just awesome. Matter of fact, he put me, I didn't know what meditation was at the time, but when the sun was rising, actually, he was playing the thumb piano, well, not the thumb piano, but he had a zither, a harp. And really, with me just really looking at the sun with no kind of thought of anything, actually, I got a little snippet of a vision, actually, that would kind of blew my mind, actually. That I never would have experienced before. So it was just that one momentary experience. And the one thing that he really said as a result of his looking into science and sound, he said that, and I think this is powerful, that he says our ancestors have embedded in the cochlea of their ears thousands of years of our sound. And said that if somebody had the ability to hit a certain frequency, that would trigger all of those sounds that are embedded within our being, so to speak. And I guess the way people respond to music in some respects has
When you first introduced me to him and I did some computer work for free, he reciprocated and gave me a saxophone lesson. And it was somewhat strange because he said, just play the mouthpiece. Leave the saxophone in the case. And the whole lesson that day was just the mouthpiece. You know, prove to me you can play a steady long tone. Okay, do a controlled crescendo, controlled decrescendo.
Well, you know what, and I forgot, it didn't impact me about him giving me the lesson though, but as I played with him after I left Northwestern, he really straightened me out in regard to my armature, actually.
Even though he wasn't a woodwind player per se, he still had insight into.
He pointed out, actually, of course, the only formal lesson I had was on clarinet, and the clarinet is a very tight-lipped type of armature. But he told me to look at Charlie Parker and pictures of other jazz musicians, and it was clear that they had a natural armature without having to tighten it up. They just put their mouths around the mouthpiece, actually, without any need to really tighten it up in any particular fashion, in a natural way. It's the one thing that I've learned from Phil, and it stays with me as a result of my armature and my playing long tones. Everybody says, man, your sound is awesome.
Right.
I might not, my creativity is a different story, but the first thing is the sound, of course.
Well, I remember him stressing long tones, and I made a mistake of saying, but long tones are boring. he said, long tones are the basis of everything. I mean, if you can't get long tones, you're not going to have a good sound. If you don't have a good sound, then what do you have?
Well, one thing that you missed, actually, in terms of the value of long tone, that's really an alternative way of getting into meditation also.
True, because he had mentioned
that's what you missed.
The yoga of breath. And in fact, one funny anecdote he told me is there was one time, 8 days in a row, he only played one note during practice. One note for 8 days in a row. He says he drove his landlady crazy. Her dog was howling. And it was just something he got into where it was this meditative focus on that particular tone every day. That was his practice session. I thought, that's the epitome of long tones. 8 days in a row, one note.
Right. That was, and then when we rehearsed, actually, which was amazing, rather than just kicking off a song, the whole group would play long tones, starting on one note, but holding it as long as you could. You didn't try to match anybody. You just close your eyes and you hear all of the long tones from the different instruments. And if you were in sync with each other, you could hear just kind of like a laser pitch going on. But if you were out of tune, you would feel or hear the waving of the disruption, actually.
Right.
And so that tightens you up, actually, in terms of unifies the whole group. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes of long tones with the group, actually, then they were ready to play.
Yeah.
Right. So it was...
Well, maybe we can, for the last topic, segue into the way he raised his children. 5 in the morning, the ritual was he would get them all up, they would go in the basement and practice. But not just music, he would also just share with them philosophy of life, discipline, healthy eating. He was a vegetarian going all the way back to, I think, 1962. So several of his sons went on to form HYPNOTIC, the group that's very popular now. What do you know about that aspect of Phil, like as his children were coming up and learning?
Children, but naturally I wasn't there to witness that, though. But I know that's one of the strongest contributing factors of giving his children the discipline by getting them up in the morning early before they went to school, like so, and practicing. And I didn't know anything about beyond the music. Well, in terms of his having to play, he's teaching, of course, and I'm sure it's just not strict music. I'm sure he's making comments with regard to life, facing life challenges.
All of it.
All of it, yeah, right. So,
And
I knew all of his children for the most part.
Going back to the Afro Arts Theater, Phil speaks quite a bit about one of his favorite projects, which is the Paul Laurence Dunbar tribute, where he took the Dunbar poems and set them to music, and then he took that all through the public schools.
That was amazing.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I didn't know anything about poetry, period, especially Paul Laurence Dunbar. But if you had heard him, we did play some things. Actually, Paul Laurence Dunbar actually captured in poetry the essence of the dialect that the slaves actually used in expressing themselves, and it was really rhythmic and beautiful. And he captured, and then he set that to music, and that kind of a music actually would have kept adults and youngsters in particular on the edge of their seats.
Well, he said that as he took it around the public schools, that somebody cried at every performance. Somebody would cry, whether a teacher or a student, or it was that moving.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that needs to really be reintroduced, actually.
Well, he also was saying that as he read those poems, he could already hear the music that went along with it. It's like the poems had audio content intrinsically, and he just the music wrote itself.
Yeah, right. Because when the Afro Arts Theater, he did a performance where we had this female matriarch and her husband. They were church people actually, but they had quite a significant, majestic voices. And his wife did something from Dunbar's poems called Two Little Boots. And I think the child
Two Little Boots, that's the one about the baby who died.
Yeah. That I can see somebody crying in that. I had some type of audio performance of it.
I hope there are videotapes of that. Maybe his sons and daughters can dig through his boxes of...
No, they didn't have any videos from...
It was never recorded at the schools or anything?
No.
Well, that would be a terrible loss. But even the audio would be worth digging out.
The audio is strong enough in itself.
Yeah.
Right. But also, when I was teaching at Forestville Upper Grade Center in Chicago, 44th and St. Lawrence, some kind of way, I don't know how I did it, but our manager got into play at our school.
Oh, you had Phil's group come play at your school?
Absolutely.
Oh,
right.
For the Dunbar pieces or just in general?
Just in general. No, there was no focus on the Dunbar.
Yeah.
Right, but I didn't get the approval of the principal or something. It was real negative, but some kind of way, I don't know how I pulled it off, but it came off and had a significant impact.
Okay, Walter. Well, let's sum it up there. This Smart Museum exhibit actually closes 2 days from now. So if you're watching this, it's too late to come see the show. But it was a wonderful treatment of the South Side art, politics, music, how they all intersected. And there's never an admission charge at the Smart Museum. It's on the University of Chicago campus in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago. Never an admission charge. Check it out when you're in Chicago.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Walter, thanks so much for taking the time, sharing your anecdotes and things, and this will help flesh out this exhibition.
There's needs to be revived.
Right. Okay, rest in peace, Phil Corinne.
Thank you for your contribution and seriousness about actually being an archivist.
So they decided to go to New York and try out the Apollo Theater.
Yeah.
And they went there. They didn't win, But they went out to Union Square and collected more money than they did in Chicago, so they never looked back from that. They're the favorites in New York. Now, you can go anywhere in New York and say, you know Hypnotic? They tell you, yeah, they live in Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
They're top. I performed there with them. What was that? Must have been in March. Yeah, around March. I performed at some place there in New York, and the people we wiped them out. They just went. So, you know, they're real well regarded in New York.
Yeah, great.
Everybody knows.
And they have a presence in Europe, too.
Oh, well, all over the world now, Africa and Australia, they're the favorites, you know.
Yeah.
They've been all those places.
Yeah.
So they travel. I can't deal with that, you know. I know they might have think of me as wanting to deal with that traveling.
You must be very proud.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud. I was fortunate. I just say I'm blessed because I taught them, but I didn't think it would have the effect that it has, and it has even more of the effect than I thought.
Yeah.
You know, it's it was just something that I thought of to get them up in the morning, because we tried practicing in the evening and it'd be interrupted so many times, and I didn't realize we would never get anywhere.
Well, that's a
like
way to
that.
start your day, too. I mean, it's a...
Well, yeah, I got them while their minds were fresh.
Yeah, and a sense of discipline and the, you know, joy of
I
creating.
got letters from all over the world, people come in about what a unique idea, you know, and I'm sure I started other people teaching the kids in the morning.